Welcome, dearly adored, chosen ones. When his spiritual brilliance brightens, your quiet becomes louder, and your presence seems like Judgment Day. Allow me to tell you something frightening. A new research found that individuals can genuinely feel energy fluctuations, even if they couldn't explain them. That is why some people shiver when you come in now. They can sense it. You don't have to say anything. Your whole aura snatches wigs and reveals monsters. This isn't simply a glow-up. This is a revolution in motion. You were the one they laughed at, questioned, and counted out. You now seem to be the embodiment of peace, power, and prophesy. And they're over there blinking, like, wait, is this the same individual who used to grieve in quiet as we slandered their name? Oh no, baby. This is not a makeover. This is a transformation. And although they're concerned about your new appearance, what's really driving them nuts is that they know they didn't contribute to the creation of this version of you, and they're not welcome to enjoy it. So saddle up, because today we'll get deep into what's actually frightening people out about the new you. Spoiler warning, it is not your skin, nor is it your style. It's the realization that you've finally stopped shrinking, and now they seem little. Let us chat about it. First and foremost, you must not only appear different. You feel unavailable right now. They think you look different today, but they're not sure what has changed. That's because it's not your appearance, clothing, or even your words. It is your energy. You walk differently. You do not carry the same emotional weight. You're no longer cognitively capable of tolerating the rubbish you formerly did. They are responding to more than simply a superficial change. It's an inside transformation that is so genuine and unmistakable that it radiates out of you, utterly confusing others. You were available prior to your energy becoming exposed. They may jab you with subtle anger, throw you off with a little guilt, or make you question yourself with their phony compassion. You used to react. You used to explain yourself. You used to attempt to make people feel comfortable in your presence. But you're no longer interested in replying. You have disconnected from their emotional grid, and they no longer know how to connect with you. That's what scares them. You're no longer emotionally open to dysfunction. You do not indulge in trivial drama. You don't tolerate misunderstanding. And because they can't find the old version of you that they knew, they feel as if they have lost control, not over your life, but over their previous access to your light. You are not chilly. You're just no longer hurt. They can't hurl emotional daggers at you and expect you to seem impervious without coming off as arrogant. It is spiritual. There's something extremely unpleasant about discovering someone you used to influence no longer reacts to your games. They begin to doubt their own identities. That is the true issue. Your new presence reveals the power imbalance that they formerly relied on. The stillness between you has become loud with truth, and it is eating them alive. You did not gotten distant. You just quit devoting your spirit to conditions that did not nourish you. And now that you've shut the door, they're standing outside of your life. Not only are they puzzled, but they are plagued by the version of you they will never see again. And it is exactly what is causing them confusion. You are not mean. You've been healed. Healing transforms everything, particularly how others see you. Number 2, you've moved beyond the persona they created for you. They do not recognize you anymore. Deep down, they are terrified. Not because you changed, but because the picture they created of you is no longer accurate. For years, they determined who you were. You were boxed in. Perhaps you were the quiet, emotional one, the failure, the soft one, the excessive or insufficient. They crafted a version of you that suited their comfort, ego, and story. You were cast as a supporting role in their life screenplay. Predictable, safe, and manageable. But that version of you is no longer there, and they are staring at someone they can't identify. You broke free from the identity they've given you, and they have no clue what to do with it. That's what truly bothers them. Not your radiance, confidence, or tranquility, but the fact that you broke the fake persona they worked so hard to maintain. They relied on the label to feel superior. They enjoyed seeing you hesitant. They felt better when you struggled. It provided them something to speak about and compare themselves to. Now that you've risen to your true nature, they're faced with a harsh reality. They never knew you. They only knew you through your grief, anguish, and silence. But now that you've healed and matured, the truth is revealed. And it's not just about you. It is about them. Because if they were mistaken about you, what else have they been incorrect about? Who else have they misjudged? What other lies are they telling themselves? Your change causes discomfort because it pushes a mirror in front of their face. You were not expected to grow powerful. You were not intended to develop. You were intended to remain in that little version of yourself so that others would feel larger in contrast. Now you're walking in your truth, which has shattered their delusion. And this is the most terrible aspect for them. You did not seek for vengeance. You did not scream for approval. You've just become someone they can no longer lie about. That is power, and they sense it every time they look at you. Number 3, you are the live recipient of their underestimate. They convinced themselves you were weak and couldn't exist without their aid, validation, or acceptance. They persuaded people that you were weak, unstable, broken, and beyond repair. And, to be honest, you nearly believed it too. You were drowning in quiet, enduring agony that no one noticed, fighting battles that no one applauded for. But you kept going. You continued to mend alone, in parts, in prayer, in the middle of the night when no one could see your tears. And now you are the living embodiment of everything they said you would never be. They misjudged your capacity to rebuild. They couldn't imagine you without the wrecked home they helped create. They expected their treachery to end you, that your seclusion would be your undoing. Instead, it became your change. You didn't just survive. You developed. And now you are quiet. Presence contradicts their whole story. That is what they all said. It's not only that you recovered. It's that you achieved it without their assistance, without their apologies, and without descending to their level. You don't wander around feeling bitter or furious. You exude elegance, intelligence, and an unmistakable calm strength. And that radiance, it explains the whole tale. It claims you've gone through fire, yet you're no longer burning. It claims you have been broken, yet you are no longer breakable. You exude an air of easy calm, but it was purchased via restless nights and several spiritual struggles. Your presence haunts them because it reminds them of what they attempted to forget. You were not intended to shine. You were not intended to grow. You weren't meant to get out, but you did. And now, every time they see you prospering, smiling, producing, or maturing, they are reminded of a cold reality. They failed to destroy you when they had the opportunity. And that reality will always speak louder to them than any retaliation could. Number 4, your radiance highlights their deficiency. There was a time when you lowered your light just to maintain the peace. You played little so that others would not be uneasy. You restrained your mouth and minimized your abilities. You lightened your tone, not because you lacked power, but because you suspected they couldn't manage it. You diminished yourself so others could feel more. But now you've recovered. In doing so, you have ceased shrinking. That's when everything altered. Your glow is about more than simply confidence and beautiful looks. It is testimony of the effort you completed in quiet. It's the culmination of all the internal fights you fought and eventually won. That brightness you see around you is earned, not given, not duplicated, and not forged. As a result, it has a scary effect on individuals who have not completed the assignment. It displays them just by being you. Simply exist in your full strength. You're accidentally shining a spotlight on them, and they don't like what they see. Your contribution heightens the sense of turmoil. Your delight highlights their misery. Your independence seems like a direct assault on their comfort zone. They aren't upset because you've grown. They're concerned because things haven't changed. You are now a walking mirror, and unlike previously, they cannot modify what they see in the reflection. Your progress reveals how stagnant, trapped, or false their own lives have become. The reality is that most folks are not offended by your brightness. They are upset that you discovered it without them. You did not seek for permission. You did not need their approval. You stopped engaging in their dysfunctional patterns. And for them, this is a betrayal. Because your shine is not only attractive, but also disruptive. It disrupts their illusion. It breaks their facade. It says that freedom is possible. And if you can be free, that implies they've chosen jail. That's what scares them. Not your success, health, or serenity, but the cold, silent understanding that they, too, had a choice. And they opted to remain in the darkness while you stepped into the light. Number 5, You're becoming unpleasant to sit next to. People used to like being around you because you made them feel at ease, rather than because you were at peace. You created room for their projections. I tolerated their subtle hostile statements, accepted their vulnerabilities, and made excuses for how they treated you. You were emotionally available in all the wrong ways. You gave the benefit of the doubt much too often. You kept quiet to keep things running smoothly. You shrugged off rudeness because you did not want to seem sensitive. But those days are gone, and you're now unpleasant to sit next to. You are no longer entertained. Fake love. You do not pretend to ignore backhanded compliments. You don't smile through subtle jabs or nod graciously at phony concern. You see everything clearly now, and your silence around it is not passive. It's quite strong. That type of intensity causes individuals to move in their chairs, suddenly realizing that the games they used to play don't land the same way. They can't seduce you with empty words. They can't make you give what you don't owe. And they definitely can't drain you like they used to. You've severed the emotional ties that they used to rely on, and this is what worries them. It's not like you've changed. It's because they can't contact you via the traditional ways. You have updated your spiritual limits. You recovered your time, energy, and intuition. You do not act as a therapist to those who insult your spirit. You don't console those who previously reveled in your suffering. You are no longer a sponge for their uncertainty. That access has been blocked, not out of bitterness, but rather out of clarity. And your clarity is combative. Not because you are criticizing someone, but because just being there causes others to consider what they are currently avoiding. You do not entertain disorder, so chaotic. People feel vulnerable. You do not ask for connection, so codependents feel rejected. You're no longer desperate for approval, and that liberation forces others to recognize how imprisoned they still are. You've transformed into a walking mirror, and most people can't bear their own image, particularly when it's quiet, healed, and no longer bleeding. Number 6. You are no longer a character in their tale. They believe they understood your function. You were going to perform the same role eternally. Perhaps the sidekick, emotional crutch, scapegoat, or the one who never quite gets it together. You were someone they could speak about, feel better than controlling a little sympathy when opportune, or exploit contrast to make their own life seem more amazing. That's how they framed you in the tale they told themselves, and most likely others. But then you switched the script. Your metamorphosis didn't only surprise them. It essentially changed the whole story they had created around you. You did not just modify your behaviors. You changed your identity. You no longer fit the part that they cast you in. And now their whole story has shattered. They had ideas for who you should be. Plans that included your limits, problems, and emotional dependence. They believed they would always be significant in your life. They assumed you would always be available. They believed they would always be required. However, growth has a way of filtering individuals out, not out of malice, but out of misalignment. You are no longer on the same route. You aren't speaking the same language. Your priorities have evolved. Your limits become real. Your vision became apparent. And as a consequence, you did not just go ahead. You went above. And suddenly the role they believed they were meant to play in your life is gone. That character was eliminated. It's not only that you changed that has people bitter. It's because you made changes without their authorization. You did not issue them a warning. You did not attempt to hang on to them while developing. You just kept developing. They continued watching until they realized they were no longer in the image. And the reality hurts. They're now on the sidelines, watching you live the life they never dreamed for you. And deep down, the most painful realization is this. They were not the major character in your narrative. They were merely one chapter. And the narrative continues brilliantly, even without their names in the credits. Number 7. Your quietness is not silent. It is a loaded weapon. Your quiet used to be ignored. They are now terrified. Not because you are ignoring them, but because you believe you already know everything. You do not argue. You do not explain. You do not protect yourself. You've achieved a degree of tranquility that is more powerful than any comeback. And that is precisely what is making people uncomfortable. It is not simply silence. It's loaded. It bears weight. It causes others to second-guess what they say around you. It makes people suspicious of what you've picked up on. They used to assume that your quiet indicated weakness, perplexity, or fear. Now they're seeing it implies something quite different. Clarity. You aren't holding back because you don't know what to say. You are holding back because you have seen enough. They are not used to someone who does not act on instinct. You observe, analyze, and reply when it matters. And when you do, it hurts harder than they anticipated. Your energy is now exposing others. It compels them to reveal the truth. That's why people get anxious when you enter a room. That is why individuals begin explaining themselves before you even ask a question. That is why some maintain their distance. You have established a presence that makes lying uncomfortable. You are not accusing anybody of anything other than the way you conduct yourself. The calmness on your face, the clarity in your gaze. It's too much for someone trying to hide anything. The quiet is no longer passive. It's quite strong. It causes pressure. It's the kind of silence that makes false people believe they're being watched by their own conscience. And you don't even need to try. You've become a human lying detector. Instead of words, use energy. You see things that others did not expect you to see. And rather than face them in turmoil, you walk away with clarity. That's what worries them. They now know. When you become quiet, it's already finished. You have already made up your mind. You've already identified the pattern. You have already let go of the emotional leash. And what they're left with is a version of themselves that they can't hide from, since your silence has revealed everything. Number 8. They didn't expect you to become the lesson. They assumed your demise would be permanent. They believed that your heartache, failure, and struggle would define you forever. You were meant to be the example, which they used to warn others not to end up like this. They were content to transform your sorrow into a joke line, your perplexity into gossip, and your quiet into humiliation. In their minds, you had already been written off. They didn't believe you to send. Even if you did, they were certain it would not be audible. But now you aren't the cautionary tale. You are the lesson, and not in the manner they had intended. Because you didn't just survive. You changed. You healed in ways that did not need affirmation. You didn't need to publicly express your anguish or your process. You walked quietly behind the scenes, doing the filthy, painful task while they watched from the cheap seats. That is why their reactions to your comebacks are so unpleasant. They cannot claim credit for any of it. You did not demonstrate your growth to their support. You become everything they said. You would never be without them. People now regard your life with a new level of respect, not because you demand attention, but because your path is evident. You carry a peace that cannot be purchased, a power that was earned, and a radiance that was not bestowed upon you. It was battled over. People feel your narrative before you say it. And the fact that your effect is quiet contributes to its force. It is real. You are proof that healing is possible, and that surviving is not the end. Transformation is an unexpected twist. Is this the same one they dismissed? Is this the one? Others get strength from others. Examine your resiliency. They want to know how you kept going. Your life, power, and independence. It speaks not just to where you've been, but also to how many odds you defied simply by remaining in your position of power. And now the people who mocked your grief must face a difficult reality. You did not become an example of failure. You became the template for salvation. Number 9, you seem to know something now. There is something different about your presence today. You didn't simply change. You've seen too much to go back, and the people around you know it. They can't exactly pinpoint it, but something about you makes them uncomfortable. It's not your attire, nor are they your words. It's not even how you conduct yourself. It's that distinct look in your eyes. The one that says, I know I've seen it, and I survived. That is the part that makes folks flinch. Because you're no longer engaging from the surface. You speak from the soul. You can see past the masks. You hear what isn't being stated. You notice energy changes, the tone behind the words, the quiet between smiles, and without ever mentioning it, you make others feel vulnerable. Your judgment has become your armor, not to attack, but to defend you. Don't allow anybody in your space anymore. That subtle limit seems like rejection to folks who are accustomed to negotiating their way in. You now possess information that cannot be acquired from reading books or borrowing from others. It was gained in dark places, lonely times, and quiet wars that no one cheered for. You were forged, not created. And that knowledge, that spiritual understanding, emanates from you in a manner that cannot be concealed or manufactured. It's not arrogance, it's awareness. When the unhealed stand next to you, they feel as if they are in the limelight. They may not know what you've gone through, but they believe you've been through something significant. And that disturbs them because they cannot lie the same way around you. They cannot perform the same roles. You've seen too much to be dazzled by titles that are deceived by charm or manipulated by fear. You are not seeking attention. You're tuned into the truth. And that alone can change a room because the healed version of you doesn't need to say much to be effective. That expression in your eyes tells it all. You may keep pretending, but I see your number 10. Your yes has gotten pricey, and your no is unavoidable. There was a time when people could readily connect with you emotionally, psychologically, and energetically. But you were always accessible. You answered the phones, explained yourself, created space, and provided second, third, and fourth opportunities. You said yes, even if it hurt, only to avoid confrontation. You carried other people's shame as if it were your duty. You reduced your needs only to keep the peace. You were the go-to fixer, the one who understood. But deep down, they understood you were draining yourself dry. This is what made you important to them. Not your presence, but rather your accessibility. Not anymore. Your yes has become pricey. It requires energy, alignment, time, and faith. You no longer provide it by default. You provide it with discretion. You don't explain why you say no, and you don't avoid guilt. You do not succumb to coercion disguised as affection. Your borders are no longer suggestions. They are spiritual rules, and the individuals who used to profit from your emotional openness are suddenly the most vocal in labeling you difficult or altered. But what they truly mean is that I can no longer utilize you in the same manner I did before. You have outgrown the function of the emotional vending machine. You're no longer pushed to be liked. You're not hooked to being seen as the good person. You've learned the hard way that being continuously accessible to everyone leaves you with little for yourself. And now you've chosen intentionality above duty. You prioritize peace above performance. People are concerned about the change in you, the improvement in how you treat yourself. Because now, if they want your time, they must show up. If they desire your energy, they must come. Correct. There will be no manipulation, loopholes, or half-effort. Just clarity, honesty, and mutual respect. Anything less is denied entry, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. You're no longer affected by phony crises, guilt trips, or emotional drama. The nervous system is no longer a playground. Your spirit is no longer an exchange. You've become holy with your yes and sovereign with your no, and those who relied on your lack of limits can't take the fact that you've finally discovered some sincere love is now earned rather than assumed. A number. You now exemplify what they claim to be. They had the words, quotations, and chosen images. They perfected the surface-level look of growth, healing, and strength. On social media, they seemed unconcerned in discussions. They said the correct things. They studied how to seem strong and to speak as if they had done the labor. However, there was no depth underneath the performance's filters. Just repetition. It's just mimicking. It's just a depiction of a version they wish they had the bravery to become. Then there's you. You did not only read the books. You lived through the chapters. You didn't merely discuss healing. You broke for it. You sobbed about it. You remained up at night, wondering everything. You experienced an internal conflict that most people avoid. You bled truth. You've lost folks. You lost your illusions. You lost aspects of yourself that were based on survival and codependency. Throughout it all, you did not miss any stages. You did not take shortcuts, nor did you pretend to be at ease. You've earned it. And now, without even trying, you exemplify exactly what others are still attempting to be. That is why they are uncomfortable with your presence. Not because you are loud, not because you're flashy, but because everything about you highlights the difference between sincerity and performance. You do not need to announce your healing. It enters the room before you do. You do not have to demonstrate your strength. It's ingrained in the way you talk and move, and you no longer need to explain yourself to be understood. You are living evidence that true labor leaves an imprint, that progress isn't aesthetic, but sacrifice, and that type of reality makes people uncomfortable when their identity is based on deception. Because when someone is dressed in a costume and you appear in the actual thing, they worry. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your presence highlights what they overlooked. You aren't aiming to be flawless. You're simply genuine. And that alone makes you deadly to the performative, since you have become what they cosplay. And that is not arrogance. That is alignment. You aren't louder than them. You're simply more accurate. A number. They are witnessing the prophecy unfold in real time. They chuckled when you said that you had a feeling something greater was coming. They ignored your instincts, gut sentiments, and calm conviction. They assumed you were simply dreaming loudly and hoping too strongly. You mentioned visions, timing, and changes that you felt but couldn't articulate. And to them, it sounded ridiculous. However, the things you used to murmur in secret are now being spoken aloud. The dots are joining. Even those who previously rolled their eyes can't dispute what they see. You aren't merely changing. You are lining up. The doors are opening in ways you always expected but couldn't push. The correct folks are turning up. The timing is astonishingly accurate. The resources you lacked before are now flooding toward you. Things is as if somebody holy has been orchestrating things from the background. Because it has. You were never deluded. You simply arrived early. And now they're seeing the prophecy unfold in real time. They're seeing proof of what you've always known. Your life wasn't random, your battle wasn't pointless, and your voice wasn't weak. They're seeing you enter rooms you used to hope for. They are witnessing you obtain benefits you never asked for. They are seeing your radiance transform from modest power to obvious impact. This makes things much more awkward for them. You did not pursue it. You're just aligned with it. And they're paying careful attention. They seem unconcerned, but they are keeping tabs. They claim they don't care, yet they never miss a post, a move, or a milestone. They are studying you without ever acknowledging that they made you. And now, deep inside, they understand you are not insane. You received a call. The fact is that they are afraid, not of you, but of how correct you were. Because if your forecast is true, it indicates their skepticism was loud and incorrect. This suggests that their ridicule was not only harsh, but also ignorant. You're unfolding right in front of their eyes, pushing them to face the strength of everything they believe they could ignore. They attempted to dismiss you, but God simply kept adding to your number. You aren't rebranding. You were always so strong. This is not a makeover. This is not a branding. You did not wake up one day and decide to be a different person. What people are seeing today, this presence, this force, is not new. It is original. You have always existed. Years of programming, survival, duty, and spiritual suffocation have left me quietly waiting. You did not reinvent yourself. You revived the pieces of yourself they attempted to bury. For years, you acted little. To live, you dimmed your light to accommodate family dynamics. You diluted your truth so that it would not offend the delicate egos around you. You took on duties you had never asked for. The good kid, the modest one, the silent one, the assistance of the forgive the fixer. You donned the masks they provided you, but there was something more behind. A knowing, a voice, a force, something old, something wonderful, something unapologetic for you. And now it's out. What is going on does not involve becoming someone new. It's about reclaiming who you were before the world taught you to be less. You've broken down the emotional barriers, the religious gaslighting that made you feel powerful, the ancient guilt that dictated you had to bear everyone else's sorrow in order to be worthy. You've let go of shame that didn't belong to you in the first place. And what's left is the true you, uncensored, unfiltered, and unbothered. People are perplexed because they no longer have a box for you. You don't fit inside their prior classifications. You are too deep for their labels, too brazen for their projections, and too aware for their control strategies. They don't know whether to fear you, envy you, or strive to imitate you. So they settle with calling you something different. But you're not different. You are free. That concerns many who still use a phony identity to feel safe. The new you is not a phase. It is a revelation. And those who only knew the veiled version of you are startled to learn that you were never weak. You were just bogged down. And now that the weight has been removed, your light is free. You aren't rebranding. You're recalling a number. You are no longer an option. You're the standard. Previously, you were viewed as a backup plan. People expected you would always be present. They accepted your benevolence as a promise. They perceived your patience for being weak. They assumed they had all the time in the world to return whenever it was convenient. You weren't their first priority, just a convenient choice. You still showed up with love. Nevertheless, you provided without demanding. You were faithful even when others weren't. Because you didn't realize how valuable you were back then, and they weren't going to demonstrate it to you. However, that version of you no longer lives here. The person you become isn't waiting to be selected. You make your own choices. Every time you've stopped to make place for somebody who only noticed you clearly after you backed away. You are no longer impressed by delayed recognition or guilty apologies. You don't seem to have much energy. You do not beg for the bare minimum. You have improved your spirit. That altered everything. They now look at you differently. The same people who previously ignored you are now obsessed with you. Who is going to do what now? Replay your words. The same people who sought to humble you are now discreetly attempting to replicate your shine. But it wasn't the outward you that changed. It's an inner alignment. You walk like someone who understands precisely what they're carrying. Not only do you talk differently, but you also vibrate differently. That's what surprises them. You're not looking for affirmation anymore. You are the validation. You are not an addition to someone else's life. You are the table, the main course, the crimson diamond who does not need persuading. You aren't a maybe. You are the measurement. And now people realize that what they were playing with was truly the blueprint. You were sacrosanct. They lacked the spiritual maturity to handle the situation. You were the red. They felt it was replaceable. But it's too late since you no longer want to be involved. You are the standard, and you will not shrink to prove it. You shine unapologetically. Allow them to speak. Let them speculate. Allow them to murmur about how different you have become. Because they're correct. You are unique, but not because you tried to impress others. You developed to recall who you were before the world attempted to shape you. What they are experiencing today is not arrogance, vengeance, or a sudden shift. It is the gradual, holy return of a soul that refuses to be buried under fear, shame, or survival. You don't simply seem powerful. You are strong not because you pushed it, but because you released it. The version of you they mismanaged was not an error. It was a squandered chance. The radiance they admire is not a result of cosmetics. It's spiritual and dynamic. It's cosmic justice for every tear, betrayal, and moment. You were underestimated. You did not merely grow. You outgrown everything that needed you to remain tiny in order to be liked. They're now witnessing in real time as the predictions you kept quiet come true. The downloads you could not describe are becoming a reality. Your former voice is resonating across the room. They previously scorned your soul, but now it serves as your standard and energy source. It isn't for validation, but for vibration. Only those on your frequency may now hold it. So no, you are not rebranding. You aren't attempting to prove anything. You aren't faking it until you make it. You made it through hell, healing, fire, and back to yourself. Now walk like it. Stand true to yourself and your voice. Keep your peace and understand this. They did not reject the old you. They denied access to the true you, who was always ready to rise. And now that you've risen, they'll never forget how much it cost them to lose someone they didn't even realize existed until it was too late. If something struck a chord with you, don't keep it a secret. Click the like button to express your love. Comment below and let your truth be heard. And share this video with someone who needs to be reminded of who they are and, most importantly, who they will become. Subscribe to this channel. This is not simply material, it's confirmation. It's an alignment. It is the activation process. We are creating a place for the awakened, healing, and developing. And the fact that you are here is not an accident. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a miraculous download, since it is just the start of something amazing. Your glow up is not superficial. It is spiritual, and this channel serves as your mirror. Welcome home.